It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. We got constitutional attorney, talk radio host Kris Hall is on the line. Kris, thanks for spending some time with us this morning.
Oh, no, it is my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And thanks for coming to Arkansas. How's your trip been so far? Let's say you've been to, back on the 18th, you were at AQ Chicken House in Springdale, and last night the Warren's Rec Room in Alma. How's that been so far?
Man, it's been fantastic. The enthusiasm, the patriotism, and the hospitality of the people here in Arkansas is just among the best, and we have been well received, and the people are just excited and enthusiastic about the education. We taught on the Fourth Amendment there in Springdale, and then the lesson that I teach called America Disarmed in Alma, which is also the event that I will be teaching in Jonesboro on Friday, America Disarmed, and then on Thursday in Jonesboro, I'm going to be teaching on state sovereignty.
Wow. I'm really excited. So I'm gonna be there because I'm in Little Rock now, I'll be there at the Hilton Garden Inn tomorrow and on Friday, and so I'm really excited to meet you in person. First of all, and second of all, to listen to some great instruction and great teaching on our founding documents. And so it says here so that you're going to be in Jonesboro tomorrow night and Friday night at the Hilton Garden Inn. And then you'll head down, I guess, on Saturday, the Courtyard Marriott in Hot Springs at 10 a.m. That is in Hot Springs. And so you're really just making just these crisscross trips across the state, and I think that's great.
Yeah, no, we're very, very excited about it. And this is the longest we've had to teach in Arkansas. And like I said, the people here are just so excited about these lessons in liberty because, Paul, we're not seeing these lessons taught anywhere. The lessons that are dedicated to the original understanding of the Constitution, dedicated to individual personal liberty and the power that the people have through their own activity, through that of their state and local governments, to restore the liberties that America was founded upon. People are tired of waiting on Washington, D.C., and I'm thankful that we're coming to the end of our love of and desire for a Messiah in D.C. to save the American people. People are beginning to realize that the only real defense of liberty is the personal defense, and that only comes through personal knowledge and understanding of liberty itself, but also the way our government was created and the proper operation of that government under our constitutional republic.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. You mentioned, I'd like to explore that. You mentioned this Messiah complex. Now, typically, that's something that is seen on the left. It certainly was something that was seen with Barack Obama. Then you look at how, and I know you're familiar with this, the executive branch. Okay, this has just grown over the years, over our 200-year history. It's gotten more and more powerful, and now you do have President Trump in there, and I think it's fair to say there would probably be some that would say that the Messiah complex is also seen, and President Trump just needs to do things. We're seeing that now with President Trump, some people saying he's going around Congress by using this 1976 law or 1970s law to declare a national emergency and reallocate funds. As a constitutionalist, where do you fall down on that?
Well, the President of the United States, no matter whether you like him or not, or he's your guy or not, doesn't have an authority delegated to him by the Constitution to issue a declaration of national emergency. That is simply not a power that we find in Article 2. And Article 2 is the only source of constitutional authority for the President of the United States. And the idea that because Congress is failing to do this, that it's somehow the duty of the President to pick up a dropped obligation of Congress is also an unconstitutional idea. Our founders created the office of the executive with very, very limited authority for a very specific reason. They were afraid that over the years that the president would become a king, consuming power from the executive and the judicial branches, and becoming the very kind of dictator that we separated from in '76. And the idea that the president should now exercise this power is not only unnecessary, but it is a very dangerous precedent to set. And what we have to understand is through our constitutional republic, if Congress fails to act in a delegated authority, that power does not somehow transfer to another branch of the federal government. Constitutionally speaking, if any branch of government fails in their responsibility through delegated power, that authority then returns to the place from which that power was delegated. And that means that the power returns to the states. The border issue, border security, is not an executive authority. It is solely a congressional authority to declare war or to repel insurrections and to defeat any invasion, or to order the defeat of any invasion. Once Congress then makes those orders, then it's the executive branch, and then only then is it the executive branch's authority to act. But when Congress fails, it becomes the duty of the state to protect their people. So what we should be really seeing, Paul, is a discussion in the public forum and in the political forum about how we activate our states to do their job. And the most discouraging thing is that this discussion is simply not being had. And I believe that it's not being had because the people in power in the federal government don't want the American people to be acquainted with the real power and authority that they possess on the state and local level.
Wow, I can't wait to hear you teach on state sovereignty. And I know you have a lot of this stuff is up on Liberty First University. Is it libertyfirstuniversity.com? Is that what it is, Kris Ann?
Yes, it's
Okay.
libertyfirstuniversity.com.
Yeah. So this is a fascinating situation to me. So I want to back up with what you said. So talk a little bit about the authority that the legislative branch, Congress, delegated to, and maybe it was unconstitutional when they did, but they passed this law in the 70s. They passed it, saying that the executive can declare a national emergency. So I mean, I've heard before in Article 1, Section 1, it's the non-delegation clause. So talk a little bit about that, because this is a journey, right? This has been a gradual thing where, the executive branch gets larger because in many cases Congress is allowing it to.
Yeah, well, and again, the transfer of power is a per se unconstitutional act, which means the very idea that Congress can transfer power to the president is wrong. And it makes that transfer of power, even though it is done via legislative act, it makes that a null and void act. Article 6, Clause 2 is the authority in the Constitution. It says, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land. And we know from that clause that laws made by Congress, which are not made in pursuance to the Constitution, are therefore not the supreme law of the land, and the drafters of the Constitution went so far to say that those particular laws are null and void. So when Congress creates a law that is not made within the authority of the Constitution or is contrary to an authority within the Constitution, then those laws have the effect of no law at all. And that's what we have to really understand, is that this law that Congress created in the 70s is simply a null and void act because it's contrary to the Constitution itself. And the only authority that this law possesses is the authority that we allow it to have in its illegal status, which means that we're allowing the Constitution, we're allowing Congress and the office of the president to act illegally, contrary to the supreme law of the land.
Okay, so I mean, what you've just said there is something that I've talked about before. It's been a while. I mean, but we're not operating with any sort of constitutional framework then, because you look at all of these agencies that operate under the executive branch that Congress itself created, and they create all these rules, or they can submit them to the Federal Registry. They're rules, but they're essentially laws, because if you don't follow them, you either pay a fine or go to jail. It's the same thing that happens if you don't obey a law. And so Congress, is not supposed to be able to take their lawmaking authority and just give it to another body, but that's what's happened time and time again. So I mean, how long has this been going on, Kris? I mean, this is really we haven't been operating under the document we have for decades, if not a century. It seems like.
Well, and it's what you're saying. What you're really telling us, and what we must admit, is that we have a completely lawless government when they act under these laws that are made contrary to the Constitution and outside constitutional authority. Now, from an academic perspective, I can trace that back to 1833, when we began teaching that the lawlessness of our Congress should be acceptable. And that's when we really started changing our perspective on how Congress, how the Constitution, and even how the judiciary and the executive branches are to operate. And so we didn't begin actually operating lawlessly in 1833, but that's when the plans of this errant understanding and application of the Constitution began at the academic level.
Wow.
So we've been teaching the wrong things since 1833. And here's the key. Samuel Adams, our founders, warned us about errant education and the lawless federal government. Samuel Adams said, "No people will tamely surrender their liberties or be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved." He said, but on the contrary, when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. And meanwhile, we are so distracted by every invention of federal drama that we're missing the fact that our greatest threat in America doesn't come from a southern border or an ISIS invasion. They are the product. Those threats are the very product of the ignorance that has been thrust upon the American people to keep us just distracted and dedicated to the wrong things in government.
We're talking with Kris Hall, she's a constitutional attorney and educator. She's a radio host. You can find out more about her great class at Liberty First University. Again, she's going to be tonight. Actually, you're crossing the border, Kris. You're going to be in Sallisaw, Oklahoma, at the Sequoia County Fairgrounds at 7 p.m. Presenting on Liberty First University. But then the next 2 nights in Jonesboro at the Hilton Garden Inn, then down to Hot Springs over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. You can find this, folks. We got this posted up at conduitnews.com, and also know it's up at is it Liberty First University or KrisAnnHall.com.
KrisAnnHall.com. We have a calendar on KrisAnnHall.com, and it gives you all of our appearances. We travel all over America. We have, for the last 7 years, averaged about 260 classes in over 22 states, and we are just so excited to be.
Real quick, because I want to kind of get back to what we talked about at just the very beginning. So you mentioned on the sovereignty of the states. So the Congress fails to act, right? So I'm just thinking idealistically, but at the same time practically. So let's say Texas is like, it's up to us. Texas, we're going to build this border. We're going to secure our border.
Right.
We of course know that would be challenged in court, right? I mean, that's the reality that we live in.
Well, the reality, okay, so that is the forced reality, yes. But the true application of the understanding of the Constitution is that even if the federal court would tell the states that they are not to exercise this power, the states would understand by Article 6, Clause 2, and by Article 3, the delegation of power to the judicial branch, that that particular opinion issued by the court would also be null and void, because the court cannot remove power from the state that lawfully exists by opinion. And that's something that we have also lost based on that errant understanding of the Constitution that we've been teaching for the last since 1833. The Supreme Court cannot amend the Constitution by Supreme Court opinion. And the ruling matter in this is the 10th Amendment, that if the powers are not delegated to the United States, that they are reserved to the states. Now, the key word there, Paul, in the 10th Amendment is delegated. And that word delegate means a temporary trust of authority or responsibility from a higher power to a lower power. We know through history and through the creation of our Constitution that the delegation of every power to the federal government comes from the states. So if since the states are the delegators of that power, that means they are the higher power that is temporarily trusting the federal government with this authority. And it's like an employee-employer relationship. When the employee, the federal government, fails to do the job the states have delegated to it, that power returns to the states to make sure that the people and their rights are always secure. We are not left to flounder and just simply wait for invasion if the federal government fails. We have a personal responsibility and a responsibility delegated by the people to the local and state governments to ensure the security of our rights. If you read the Declaration of Independence, Paul, the entire purpose of government, it says, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. So the only reason our state and local governments exist are to secure our rights.
Kris and Hall, we really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you in your upcoming events here in Arkansas. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Now, we have a specific article on the constitutionality of the national emergency by the president at krisandhall.com, and lots of other great articles to help.
Awesome. Thank you. Can't wait to meet you tomorrow night.
Thank you, sir. Me too.
Kris and Hall, everybody. Obviously, she knows what she's talking about. And so if you want an originalist interpretation of this Constitution, and really and truly, I mean, what I got out of that interview just now is the fact that, I mean, Constitution doesn't mean anything. Like, in terms of practicality, in terms of like, are we living within the confines of that document? No, not even close. Not even close. Kind of discouraging when you think about it. But hey, the only way to even try to, turn the ship around is to educate people on what the truth is. And what she is speaking, I don't know if you can tell, is coded in truth. It is just the truth of what that document allowed the government to do. And we have far, for a long time gotten outside of that.